Michael Franzese was not just a soldier, but a capo in the notorious Colombo crime family. He spent the better part of a decade in federal prison on charges including tax fraud, racketeering, and parole violations.
I grew up in New York where there are 5 organized crime families. My dad was a underboss in the Colombo crime family back in the 1960s.
I went to see my dad in Leavenworth, and I said, Dad, listen, I don't want to go to school anymore. During the course of that visit, he said to me, listen, if your mind is made up and you don't want to go to school, then if you're going to be on the street, I want you to be on the street in the right way. And that's how it started for me.
Michael Franzese was a made member of organized crime. His main forte was making money for the mob. In a very short period of time, Michael Franzese made over $300 million for the Colombo organized crime family.
By far the biggest and most lucrative business enterprise that I got involved in was the wholesale gasoline business. In a nutshell, we devised a way to sell the gas, collect the taxes, and not pay the taxes. I was there to be in business and to make money, real money.
How much money do you think you and Michael with your gang stole in your operation?
Several $100 million.
Life magazine called him the mob's young genius.
The government calls him one of the biggest money earners in the history of organized crime.
Handsome and high-living young man, as rich as royalty. And royal he is, a prince of the mafia.
Michael Franzese has been called every name under the sun by people on both sides of the law.
Made millions, lived a flashy life, and came to be known as the Yuppie Don.
Did you fix any games in college?
Absolutely.
He says he doesn't have $14 million.
He doesn't. He has about $50 million.
How do you know that?
Because I personally delivered it to him.
I was notorious, maybe infamous, maybe sophisticated at times, but I was a criminal.
And you realize that it's a life built on treachery and that money and power are the driving forces. I really questioned the life and my commitment to that life at that moment.
Mike, you have, without a question, a notorious past. I'm sure there are a lot of things that you've done, been involved in, that today you regret, you've repented of. But it has to be a phenomenal transition to have gone from a whole way of life. You said this morning, it's not just something you're a part of, it's a way of life. Mm-hmm. And now the turnaround. What happened in you? How did such a transformation take place in your life?
Well, you know, Pastor, a transformation like that really has to happen from the inside out. And you know, I always say this, when you come to the Lord, you don't get a lobotomy. You don't forget who you were and where you came from. And it took me years and years and years before I was really able to make the transition. And even now, you know, if I get off a plane in New York and I have a little bit of an encounter, the old Michael can snap right back quickly. And I think people understand that. So God really had to do a work on me to transform my heart, to transform my mind. My mind was really the thing. And I was fortunate because it's a message that I believe in so strongly, is that you must surround yourself in this life with good people, with people that are going to lead you in the right direction. Because if that didn't happen to me, if I didn't have my wife, if I didn't have my mother-in-law, people that I was blessed to be around to keep me grounded and keep me the right way, I would have never made the transformation. And that's why I understand when young people or people that have been in a difficult lifestyle, when they have such a hard time making that transition, because it's very, very difficult. And, you know, I've been blessed. I've been really blessed that I've been able to do this.
Now, we're going to talk more about the transition. In a moment, I want to ask you about the program you mentioned to me today that you've been working on coming out. Mm-hmm. But before we go there, for the benefit of some of our guests who weren't here this morning and never heard you before, exactly what were you involved in? And how much were you a part?
I was inducted into the family. I actually took an oath in 1975, Halloween night, 1975. I took a blood oath. I was inducted in a very serious, solemn ceremony on Halloween night. And I became a made member of the mob, and that's the term that they use. And you actually go through a ceremony where you shed some blood, and you cup your hands, and they put a picture of a saint in your hands and burn it, and tell you that if you violate the oath that you're taking now, then you'll die and burn in hell, like the saint is burning in your hands. And you come into the life as a soldier. And eventually, because I had some success financially and I was, determined to be the best possible mob guy I could be, in 1980, the boss of my family, Carmine Persico at the time, was now doing life in prison. He appointed me a capo regime, captain. And that's a very powerful position in that life. When you're a capo regime, the next step up is normally boss or underboss or consigliere. And I operated from 1980 until about 94, when I consider myself removed from that life. I operated as a captain in the family.
Right. Now, you were very modest when you said you were reasonably successful. How successful in dollar terms? We heard it briefly on the video that played earlier. How many millions of dollars were you earning for the family?
Well, there's a real fallacy in that life. The night I got made, after there were 6 of us that got made that night, and after that, we all do what every, great Italian does. We go in and we have a banquet. We ate. And so I never forget, we were sitting down at the table, and all the captains and the boss was there, the underboss, and one of the captains came in with a brown paper bag, and he said, "Okay, boss, should I give them all their bag of money now?" The thought being that you come into that life and all of a sudden you become wealthy. It's the other way around. You have to start paying up. As soon as you come in, you're providing for the family. And so you separate yourself really, really pretty quickly, because not everybody is an earner. In the Colombo family at that time, we had 115 made guys that actually took the oath. Out of the 115 guys that actually were sworn in. Out of that 115, there were 20 of us that were earning money. The other 95 we were basically supporting them, and they did a lot of the grunt work and so on and so forth. And so I was determined to succeed in that life. I wanted to please my dad, and I wanted to do well, and I had a head for business. And I just knew how to use the life to benefit me in business, and went on. I had a lot of legitimate businesses. I had 2 automobile agencies. I had a Mazda agency and a Chevrolet agency. I had a couple of leasing companies. I got involved with nightclubs. I was very aggressive, Rob, extremely aggressive. And then I went on to do some, I was in the gambling business. I had 13 bookmakers that worked for me. And unfortunately, at the time, we had a lot of athletes gambling with us, and some of them compromised the outcome of a game. I mean, we targeted these guys on both the professional and the college level.
And when you say they compromised the outcome of the game, they didn't just decide, "Oh, I'm going to compromise this game."
No,
they had a little visit.
Well, yeah, they got into debt, and they couldn't pay off the debt, and we told them the way you're going to pay it back is this is what you're going to do. You're favored to win by 10 tonight. Don't win by 10, win by 6. You're a basketball player, you can control a game. If you're, one of 5 guys on the court, you miss a couple of foul shots, you get a couple extra fouls, you shave the points. So you don't win by 10, you win by 6. You don't lose the game, but you don't cover the spread. It's all about the spread. Right. It's not winning and losing. So we put athletes in that position purposely so they could do our bidding. And it's very unfortunate, but that's the truth. And so I had a number of bookmakers, and where my major success was in the gasoline business. Long story short, along with another guy, I devised a scheme we became gasoline wholesalers, where we would buy the gas. We were licensed to purchase gas and collect the tax on every gallon of gasoline and sell it to gas stations and other distributors. And I had a big operation here in Florida. And we devised a way to keep the tax, not pay the government. The tax back then was about 35 to 40 cents a gallon. So we were able to hold on to that, and at the height of my operation, I was selling 500 million gallons of gas a month. So you do the math. It was a lot of money. And we were bringing in about $50 million a month. And,
15.
50.
$50 million
a
month.
A month in tax revenue.
In taxes.
Yes.
You actually do talks in the colleges around the country. You talk to some of the up-and-coming basketball players, athletes, et cetera, et cetera. You work with the FBI and the different law enforcement agencies now, and you help prepare these college students how to avoid getting involved in debt with gambling. Is that right?
Yeah, and I want to tell you, because I think this is important. I look at all of this as ministry, because when God has got a plan for your life, He may start out in a way that you don't even realize it's God's plan happening. I never intended to be a speaker or to give my testimony. It was the furthest thing from my mind. I'm in prison, and I'm finishing up a 10-year sentence. And for the last 3 years, 29 months and 7 days, they kept me in the hole because my life was in danger. They wouldn't let me out. So I was 24/7 in lockdown. Every day, I am not kidding, I never missed a day, I'd write the warden a letter. Warden, let me out of here. I'm in California. There's no wise guys out here. I can make it on this yard. They had me up in Lompoc, California. I wrote him every single day for 29 months. I handed it to the guard. He brought it to the warden. After 29 months and 7 days, the warden calls me finally to his office. And he says to me, Franzese, you're wearing me out with these letters. I said, Warden, I got a lot of time on my hands. I figured I'll write you. What else am I going to do, right? So he says to me, just for your persistence alone, I'm going to let you out of the hole.
Really?
Yeah. He said, you can't be that stupid that you're going to let yourself out to get killed. He said, I'm going to let you out, but here's the deal. He said, you have to sign a waiver. If you get killed on the yard or you get beat up, you're not going to hold the Bureau of Prisons responsible, and I'm going to make your wife sign a letter too. I had a heck of a time getting my wife to sign it. I had to beg her because she didn't want to sign it. I was going to forge her name. The old ways were still there, right? But he wanted her signature. Finally, she gave in, she signed, and he lets me out. So I lost 20 pounds in a hole. You don't eat good there, and I'm going home in 6 months, and I wanted to get myself in shape, so I'm going to walk the yard every day. I had a Sony Walkman. I go into the weight room. I gained my weight back. The first day, I'm walking the lap, and I hear Franzese report back to the warden's office. It was over the loudspeaker. I said, oh, man, he changed his mind. Well, Washington contacted him and said, put him back in a hole.
No deal.
So I'm preparing my whole speech. I get there, and it gets worse. I see two guys in suits. I don't need to see the badge. I see the suit and the shoes. I know who they are, FBI, right? I turn around and walk out. Franzese, get back here. I said, no, guys, leave me alone. They had put a lot of pressure on me to cooperate, and it wasn't what I was about. That's why they violated me. And I said, I'm not cooperating. Leave me alone. They said, we don't want you to cooperate. We got it. But we need a favor from you. I said, no favors. You guys, there's always strings attached. Leave me alone. I got 6 months to go. They said, get in here and sit down. I said, what do you want? Major League Baseball, the NBA, NFL, and NHL are doing an anti-gambling video. They said, you had all these bookmakers on the street, you were corrupting the athletes, you claim you turned your life around, this is what we heard, we're going to give you a chance to prove it. Come and participate in this video. I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a setup. I said, you guys are telling me I'm going to get killed when I get out of here, now you want me to make a video? I said, come on. And they said, no, this is for real, we want you to do this. And I said, I never did anything like that before, leave me alone. They said, Mike, how long you been in jail? I said, what are you kidding me? I said, I've been here 8 years. You guys put me here. You know how long I'm here. They said, if you agree to do this, we're going to sweeten the pot. I said, what do you mean? We're filming this in Chicago in a hotel. We already got you set up. We got a hotel suite. They said, real pillows, real blankets, real bed, king-size bed. I never forget, they said, order room service, eat pasta, macaroni, whatever you Italians eat. They said, have a ball, eat. And they said, for 3 days while we film this, you're going to have some freedom. We don't think you're going to run away. You're not that dumb. You're going home in 6 months. And I'll be honest with you, please, I don't want to be offensive, but I said, hey, I'll tell you what, I've been down a long time. If you get my wife in that hotel room with me, I'll make a video on anything that you want, And I meant it.
I'll squeal. I'll tell on anybody.
But I always say for you young people, we were married. She was my wife. It was okay. So they laughed and they said, well, we'll try. But as it turns out, we had an earthquake that weekend in California. So they were going to take me out. They couldn't take me out. Just my luck, right? And but since I agreed to do it, NBA Productions came into the prison and they filmed my portion of the video in there. And they spent about $250,000. All the leagues chipped in. And they did a great job, about 20 minutes. It was all about Pete Rose and Art Schleister, and Greg Gumbel was the MC. And I did my part. I get out 6 months later, and Major League Baseball and the NBA contact me directly, because I didn't realize they featured me throughout the whole video prominently. Because I told them, listen, this is how we trap the athletes, this is what we did, this is why gambling's no good, and I just let it roll. And they said, Mike, this video is having an impact on our players. Would you please come and speak to them directly? We really need you. And ever since then, I go to spring training every year. I speak to all 30 Major League Baseball teams. I do the NFL. NHL, NBA. I speak to their rookies every year. And then in 1998, the NCAA came to me and said, Mike, you got to take this to the college level because that's where we really got a problem. I said, hey guys, I know the pros are one thing, but the college,
I know, I helped start it.
Yeah, the college kids are easy to corrupt. And since '98, I've spoken to probably 400 and some odd universities throughout the country, mostly Division I. And we've been having an impact, you know, we really have. And but you see, that's how God opened the door for me to speak. It didn't start in a church. It started that way.
Fantastic.
And it's like I backed into this. I didn't plan this, but you know, God, this is what people need to understand. When He's got a plan, you don't know how He's going to implement it, you know, but He just put people that were my enemy back in my corner. And it's been like that for me over the past 15, 16 years, that people that, you know, everybody, Pastor, that I thought I'd never have a relationship with. My father and I didn't speak for 10 years. My whole family rejected me, called me all sorts of names. It's come full circle. My dad and I are closer than ever now. All the people that rejected me, and I didn't put the effort in because I figured, you know what, I should just stay away. And they all came back to me in God's time, according to God's plan. And it's amazing how the Lord works. It just really is.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. You know, the Bible says that when we come to God, He'll restore things. It actually uses the phrase that He'll restore the years that the cankerworm has devoured. Cankerworm goes through the harvest fields and just chews up the harvest fields. And God says He'll restore that. And He's obviously restored that for you. You talked about, on a number of occasions, the amount of guys that were around when you were around, the 5 other guys that were made when you were made, et cetera, et cetera. How many guys end up in jail? How many guys end up dead? Tell the crowd here tonight some of those statistics so that they can have a better appreciation of how God has kept His hand on you and protected you from either a life in jail or an early grave.
Well, yeah, you know, it's important to know this too. When God puts us in a position, He doesn't put us there unprepared. When I walked away from the life, and everybody said, Mike, you're crazy, you got to understand something. I spent 20 years in the life at a high level. I knew the mentality. I knew what guys wouldn't do, what they would do, and what they wouldn't do. And so when I was walking away, I said, well, I got to change my whole lifestyle. I can't go to clubs anymore. Club is a bad place. Till now, I don't go to a club. My wife and my daughters are all dancers. They're not going to dance with me in a club. Why? It's a bad place for me. People know who I am. I know who hangs out in clubs. I'm in a club one night, LA, Miami, New York. Somebody notices me, a wise guy, makes a phone call to New York. Hey, Franzese is here. He wants to be gain some stripes for himself. I walk out into the parking lot, boom, I'm gone. I don't go to the same restaurant every night of the week or one night of the week and sit in the same place. I don't walk my dog at 7 o'clock in the morning and create a pattern. So if people are looking at you, they know your routine.
So even today?
Even till today.
Oh, and I just sent 20,000 flyers out and I'm sitting on the stage with you?
Well, you know, you got to, again, knowing the mentality. You know, nobody's going to run in here, I hope, and do something crazy. But,
no.
You know, so in that life, you know, the way when you're in trouble, and I want to talk about that experience that I had, your best friend walks into a room, hey, everything's great, you don't walk out again. That's how things go down quite often in that life.
I remember, you talked about this at the dinner table the last time I had you here, that whenever they had to do a number on someone, oftentimes they'd get one of his best friends to walk him in to the room.
Yeah.
And then that was the end.
Yes, and you know, again, and this is something that I hope people use in their own life and understand this. Was I afraid when I walked away? I wasn't afraid because God showed me that I can face death. How did that happen? One night, my dad calls me. He was out on parole. He was a captain, I was a captain. We were both the same rank at that time. And there had been some rumbling on the street. There was an article that came out in Newsday. It was a big Long Island newspaper that I was making billions of dollars and that my crew was becoming strong enough to break away from the Colombos and start my own family. It was just a nonsense article. I don't even know where the guy came up with it from. But guys start to get nervous. My boss started to get nervous.
Do you think that was deliberately planted to create anarchy in the family?
You know, I don't know. Either that or maybe they had some informant that just fed them this nonsense information. I had no intention of that whatsoever. But people start to get nervous because I had a lot of relationships with some of the other families because I was given. Fat Tony Salerno was the boss of the Genovese family. He calls me one day. He says, "Hey, Mike, you know, I got these guys around me. They can't earn a quarter." He says, "Can you help me out?" Now, Fat Tony, you got to know the big cigar. And I love the guy, right? And I said, "Tony, don't worry about it." I said, "I got 300 and some odd gas stations." I said, "I'll put him in a gas station. He'll earn himself a good salary every week." He said, "Really? How much will he earn?" I said, "I'll give him $1,500 a week." He said, $1,500 a week? He said, "Give him 500, give me the extra 1,000, right?" Just like that. So I said, "Hey, Tony, whatever you want." I said, "Just don't let the guy rob me." And you make a lot of friends when you're doing that. So I was making friends, and you know, it was the gas business gave me a lot of access like that. So my boss was getting nervous. And they started, I had brought the Russians together. They were my partners in Brooklyn. And they were getting nervous, so they started questioning people about me, and I knew what was going on. So my dad calls me, he says, I go to his house, and he says, "Listen, Junior wants to see us tonight." I said, "Okay, no problem. What time you want me to pick you up?" He says, "No, they want to do this different." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "They want me to come in first, they want you to come in second." I said, "No, we're not doing that." I said, "You know the talk on the street. We're not going to let them separate us. If we go together, Dad." No, we can't show fear. We were given an order, my dad. You know, we were given an order. We got to go the way we were told. I said, "No good." First time I ever had an argument with my father. And I said, "Dad, you know the talk." I said, "Why are we going to let them walk us in there separate?" I said, we go together. If something's going to go down, let's be together. We went at it for about 20 minutes. Finally, I threw up my hands. I said, "You know what? I've been listening to you all my life. If that's what you want, I'll do it. I'm not happy, but I'll do it." I leave. I get a call from another captain, Jimmy Angelini. He says, "Mike, meet me on 18th Avenue in Brooklyn." The boss was on parole, so it had to be a covert meeting, so he couldn't be seen with us, right? So I meet him there 11:30 at night. I park my car. Jimmy says, "Get in my car. I'll drive you to where the boss is." I get in the car. There's a guy sitting in the back seat. I barely recognized him, right? I said, "Man, this don't look good." Now, Jimmy, I knew him all my life. And we were friends. And he don't talk to me about what's going on. So finally he says to me, "Hey, how the Yankees doing?" I said, "The Yankees?" I'm saying to myself, I'm a diehard Yankee fan. I didn't want to hear about the Yankees that night. I wanted to know what was going on. He's not talking to me. Situation, in my
estimation,
is getting bad. Right.
You knew where this potentially was going.
Yeah, I'm saying this is not good. Separated me and my dad. Now I'm wondering, is my dad okay? He went there. I've got all these things going through my head. So we pull up to the curb, and we had to go to a basement apartment in Brooklyn. Pastor, I tell you, when we got out of the car and I started walking, Jimmy walked behind me, the other guy was behind him. That was either the longest walk or the shortest walk of my life. My knees were shaking, my heart was racing. I remember the crickets chirping. I remember the smell of the flowers. It was like, I didn't know if this was it. What kept me going, it wasn't courage. It was just, I guess I was so much a product of that life. I was saying, hey, if this is it. And I'll tell you what, and this is why I tell people, the seed you plant in the heart of your loved ones, I was not a religious guy at all. I was praying every step of the way. God, please, if this is it. I'm praying to God, a God that I didn't even care about, right? And I figure when I walk in that door, I'm either going to see the light or it's going to be over. And obviously, I walk in the door. I'm here. They sit me down. They're grilling me about the gas business. No problem. As a matter of fact, I got angry. And at one point, I had to, because you don't get angry with the boss. But I had to control myself. I said, hey, I'm bringing you guys more money than you ever seen. I'm taking all the risk, and you're questioning me like this. So I started to get a little bit, and then I calmed myself down because that's not good either. My dad wasn't there. After we're finished, hey, Mike, good, have a glass of wine. Everybody hugging, kissing. I just wanted out of there. I was angry, right? So we're done. We get back in the car with Jimmy. I turn to Jimmy, and I'm just about to blast him. And he says, before you say anything, let me say this to you. I said, what? He said, you held yourself pretty good in there tonight. He said, Mike, that could have been a real problem for you. So now I'm more mad. I said, you know that and you don't tell me this? I'm your friend. We know each other how long? I'm in trouble and you won't tell me? So he turned to me and he said, well, if it was the other way around, would you have told me? And he just hit me like that, and I thought about it and I said, no. And you're not going to want to hear this, but it's the truth. I said, what? He said, your father, who was in there before me, he said, he didn't help you one bit in there tonight. Not one bit. And that hit me like the proverbial ton of bricks. And I'm saying, wow. So I walk out of the car and I'm starting to think. I said, my father didn't help me. Then I realized what he did. He didn't go out of his way to hurt me, but what he did is, hey, I don't know. If my son is stealing, he does everything. I'm on parole. I don't do anything. He handles everything. He's with the rush. He just took the high road and basically sold me out. And Pastor, you know, it had such an impact on me. I just filed it away because there was nothing I can do. I didn't meet my wife at that point, but it had an impression on me. I filed it away because I said, man, I love this. This is my dad with the bond, and I fought hard to get him out of prison. I'll tell you how God works. If that incident, number one, it showed me I could face death, so that later on when I left the life, I said, okay, I can handle it. And number two, if this incident doesn't happen, and when I meet my wife 2 years later, it was such a betrayal to me because I said, man, if this life can separate me and my dad, what kind of life is this? I filed it away. 2 years later, I meet my wife. If this incident don't happen, I don't think I could ever walked away from the life. But God put it in my head. He started back then to say, hey, it ain't about your father. Someday you're going to see the only one you can trust is Jesus.
Yeah.
And he started early. So God prepares you for these things because that life has got such a hold on you. He had to work hard to break it. And how did he break it? With the strongest bond I had with my father.
Yeah.
And I never put this all together until spending time in a hole and seeing how God worked in my life. And I said, God, now I see the pattern. Now I saw how you had to break the hold that this life had on me, that the enemy had on me, that even my dad, the enemy was working through my dad, you know, in a way. And that's how God prepares us. And so now I'm walking away from the life. There's no blueprint to walk away from this life. I didn't have a distinct plan, just that I'm going to move out to California because, you know, it's one thing to walk in a room. It's another thing to send a hit squad across country, try to kill you, and then get away with it. Yeah. Remember, you go to jail for life for murder. So I said, I think I can handle this. I'm going to give it my best shot. And, you know, it's worked out. It just worked out.
Did you ever have to walk any of your friends into one of those meetings?
You know, it's always a tough question, but, you know, I got to say this. I'm never going to lie about it because you're a product of that life. You're into the violence, and there's no escape. And I'm a captain. You know, in that life, you don't just kill people. One of the things that people don't understand is some of these mobs and these gangs that we have today, they have no value of human life. I mean, what's going on in Mexico and these places, they're killing people like crazy. In our life, that was very, very serious. I mean, you couldn't take a life unless it was discussed and the boss had to approve it. You couldn't just do it randomly. But, you know, in our country, if you're in on one of those meetings, conspiracy, you're just as guilty as the guy that pulls the trigger. So, you know, am I aware of it? Of course. Did I know about it? Of course. And it's a sad thing.
Some of your close friends?
Yes. Oh, Jimmy Angelina, the guy that drove me. A year later, they walked him into a house and he never walked out again. The guy that drove me that night. I heard that. I was like, because I had warned him. I said, Jimmy, be careful. Because, you know, there was two factions in the family. There was the Persico faction and the Franzese faction. Jimmy was
this
actually...
This is all in the Colombo family.
Within the Colombo family. Yeah, there was two strength power. Junior happened to be the boss, but we had a lot of strength. And Jimmy was actually more with us. And I said to him, Jimmy, you're never going to be one of them. Be careful. Because they had made him a union delegate or something, I forget. And he, you know, he kind of changed a little bit. And I said, you got to be careful. A year later, they killed him. 1 year later. Walked him into a room, he didn't walk out.
How many guys would you say that you knew that were around when you were around? You threw some numbers out today. Give the crowd some numbers here.
The night I was made, 6 of us were made that night. We walked into that room. I'm the only one alive today. Not one of them died of natural causes. The Fortune magazine article that you saw there that was written in 87, there was 50 guys on that list, 50 biggest and most powerful mob bosses. Out of the 50 today, 43 of them are dead. 3 of them that I know of are doing life in prison. I don't know about the other 2 or 3. So you have 47 that are gone. The other 5 that I walked in with, gone. Everybody I know in their life is either dead or in prison for the rest of their life. Everybody.
And nobody escapes. No one walks away unless they go into a protection program.
Right.
And here you are, out in the open, talking about your past life, preaching the gospel.
And they're leaving me alive. Yeah, and listen, you know...
And that in itself is an amazing miracle, isn't it?
Well, I don't like to say it's a miracle because, you know, I believe in miracles. I have 7 children. I believe childbirth is a miracle.
Yeah.
I believe it's a miracle. I mean, if you really think about it, we take it for granted. But childbirth is a miracle. A child is born. I believe that when a terminally ill person goes in, cancer's running through his body, he's sick, he's never going to recover. The doctors tell him, you're done. Get your life in order because you're finished. He goes home, people pray for him, he goes back, he's miraculously cured. That's a miracle. I don't believe I'm a miracle. I believe that God had a purpose. I was blessed enough to become obedient to God, and he worked it out. Now, some people, my wife says you're a miracle, but she can say that because I put her through so much stuff, you know. But I don't know. I think the key in life is to become obedient and let God work things out for you. I mean, that's
it is a miracle of God's love, God's grace.
Oh, his love is,
it's that he would love any of us. God really used your wife to lead you to Christ.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, even before she was your wife, there was the wow factor.
Yeah.
Your heart was pumping. You saw this beautiful woman.
Yeah.
But she had such a godly background. God really used her.
He did, and you know, the amazing thing too, for the last 15 years, I've been trying to get my wife. I said, honey, this is your ministry as much as it is mine. My wife's very private, and she said, listen, that's your thing. I'm here to support you in prayer, to support the ministry and take care of the kids. That's my job. We went to Hawaii about 2 years ago. I was asked to come and speak in a church there, and so I said, honey, do you think you may want to come? Oh, Hawaii, right? You know. So she comes, and when I was finished in the church, she went outside by the book table. I'm not kidding. We left, and about 30 young girls ran out and surrounded her. And all of these young girls, they were between like 18 and 25, were all either married, going out with, or attracted to bad boys. And she's got the ultimate bad boy in their point of view. And they were around her, I'm not kidding, for a little over an hour.
Wow.
And she came to me and she said, wow, you know, I never experienced anything like that. And I said, I told you, you know, you can be a powerful influence on these women.
Yeah.
So we finally got her to write a book. You know, Thomas Nelson, my publisher, she agreed to do it. And, you know, it's amazing. I'm married to this woman 26 years, and Thomas Nelson, my publisher, said, you're going to help her write the book? I said, no, I don't want any part of it. We'll argue all the way through, you know. I don't want her to throw me under the bus. But anyway, so we got a great woman writer with her.
So you fear her more than you fear the
absolutely,
family.
Absolutely. I got to live with her. I can run from the family. I can't run from her. But I read the book because I was proofing it for her, and there was things that she said in the book that brought tears to my eyes. I never realized how she was dealing with some of these things.
Right.
And then I realized, and I looked at, and I said, wow, how God prepared her to be with somebody like me. It's the preparation that God puts you through when you're going to face these trials and so on and so forth to strengthen you. He just doesn't throw you in the fire. Wow. So, I mean, you know, her book, and really encouraging for, you know, for marriage. Because, you know, I say this, we do a lot of marriage things together. And, you know, we've had some real struggles over the years. And as much as we love each other, that's why I said today, you know, love alone doesn't, you know, it doesn't hold things together, because sometimes outside forces become so hard.
Great.
It's so hard to, you know, and if God isn't in the foundation of your marriage, and if you don't keep looking towards God rather than away, it could become very destructive, you know, and these marriages fall apart. And, well, I'm so blessed to have a woman like her, and my mother-in-law, who for some reason, you know, took a real liking to me. Because I remember I once told her, I said, Ma, I said, look, I will never hurt your daughter. I love her. I'll never hurt her. I said, now, there's a lot of things going on in my life. And from that point on, she became such an advocate of me. When I went to jail the second time, I thought I was going to lose Cammie. She fell apart on me. Couldn't, and her mother said, hey, You hang with this guy. He loves you. He's going through a trial. You pray about it. We'll pray together. And she kept her strong for me. It was unbelievable until Cammie regained her strength and everything, because she was young. You know, when she was devastated when I went back the second time, because they told her, you're never going to see your husband on the street again. I mean, they scared her like crazy. And,
but they weren't just trying to scare her. I mean,
no, they
from
meant
a police point of view.
Oh, they meant it. They were locking me up forever. It was all over. And, you know, she kept her mother-in-law, my mother-in-law is sitting here, me and Cammie are at the table. This was early on, before I accepted Christ. And my mother-in-law looks at me and she said, one day, God is going to use you to reach millions of people. Out of nowhere.
She prophesied it.
I'm telling you, my wife turned to her and said, Ma, don't scare him. I'm hoping for a Bible study during the week and a church on Sunday. Just like that. And my mother-in-law turned to her and said, why do you limit God's power?
That's right.
And I'm looking at these two women and I'm saying, what the heck? Yeah, I mean, it was like out of nowhere. And then I got to tell you this. I always have to tell a story because it brings chills. She died of cancer in 2001. And, you know, at that time, I was doing everything possible to try to, every new thing, I'm all over the internet, I'm calling doctors. I had her on 30 pills a day. And she was living with me. And I was taking her to UCLA for her cancer treatment. She was getting chemo. And she was rejecting the pills, doing all of this kind of stuff, and all the kids were getting mad. My wife is one of 7 kids. They're upset with her because she's not eating and she's doing this. So I'm driving her one morning, and I turned to her, I said, Ma, she got the bandana on. I said, Ma, come on, man. You know, we're trying to help you. You're rejecting this. You're not taking the pills. All the kids are getting upset. What are you doing? She turns to me. I swear she had a glow on her face. And she turns to me and she says, Michael, I'm going home.
Yeah.
I'm ready. And I have never in my life witnessed the courage that not one bit of fear or resignation that I said at that moment, there's no way that God can exist. The way this woman has lived her life, the way she has prayed people to where they are, she just cemented any doubt that I ever had at that moment and gave me the strength. The little simple woman, never did anything, never wanted to go out of the house. All she wanted to do was pray and be nice to people.
You know, amazing. When you really have that relationship with Jesus Christ and it goes beyond religion, God didn't come to set up religion. If you're here tonight, maybe you've gone to church, that's great. But Jesus Christ wants to know you personally. He wants you to know him personally. And when you have that kind of relationship with Christ, you know that you know that you know. You know that God loves you and you know where you're going because you have that witness in your heart. That's incredible. That's
incredible.
Awesome.
You know, and I tell people too, you know, people that fall back into sin, you know, they think, well, God. I said, listen, you know, you got to put God in real terms. God is our Father. Mm-hmm. You have children, you're a child. When you sin against your father, does he hate you at that point? No, he forgives you. You may suffer consequences as a result, but you always come back because God always loves you in spite of our sin.
Right.
And people sometimes don't get that.
Yeah.
You know, like I still sin. I feel bad about it. I want to do better. It's not a pattern in my life like it was at one point in time, but you know, we have to put God in real terms and really realize he is our Father. So our Father's never going to turn on us. Never. No matter what we do wrong, he's not going to turn on us.
We can turn our back on him and walk away, but he will never turn his back on us. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's, you know, again, nothing in the Bible by accident. The prodigal son, God put it in real terms.
Yeah.
You can walk away, but when you come back, open arms.
Arms are open. Why do criminals think they commit crimes and forever get away with it? Why do they think they'll always get away with it? Or is it like an addiction?
You know, my experience in prison, my experience on the street, guys in prison, even though they admit their guilt, they always have an excuse for what they did, and they always feel like they're the victims. And it's amazing. Like, did you commit the crime? Yeah, I did it, but the government did this, and these people did that, and I was given a bad way in life, and so they always try to justify their actions.
Right.
When we were on the street, we felt that we were the right guys, the government was the bad guy. I'll be honest with you, and I put this out there, I never had a problem with stealing taxes from the government. They were my enemy. And I'm saying they're going to waste the money. I mean, honest with you, I still feel that way in some ways, but sure. You know, I give the state, I had to pay the state tax last year. It killed me because I know they're throwing the money in the sewer practically or spending it on themselves, but I got to do it now, but I don't like it.
Does that mean you're going to have that talk to me about the gasoline?
No, we can't do that.
No.
But you know, that's the criminal mind. You feel justified in what you're doing. You make excuses and you feel justified and you go ahead and do it. And I justified everything I was doing back then, you know. And it's wrong, obviously, but that's how you tend to think. And
well, the bottom line is God will hold them accountable for what they do. God holds us accountable for what we do.
Absolutely.
Their sin or their errors, their injustice doesn't justify our actions.
That's right.
And so we all have to give account. One of the questions that was asked by someone in the crowd here tonight, does your notoriety affect your children in any way? Has it affected them at school? Are people aware? Kids that go to school with your kids, how has that affected them?
It did, especially when I was in prison, because I had, you know, so much publicity and so much of it was negative back then that the kids, they never really got harassed. You know, my three in New York never really got harassed, but my daughter's like, oh gosh, they're going to mention my dad again. You know, that kind of troubled them. My sons, they got off on it. Yeah, my dad's a big mob guy. You know, the boys take it differently, you know. But it affected them. And of course, being away in prison affected them. And, you know, but they dealt with it. And my wife, you know, just told them, listen, Daddy made a mistake. And he's got to pay the consequences. We never told them, you know, other than the fact that Dad did wrong, he made a mistake, and he's got to pay the consequences for it. And that's how we taught them, because I never wanted them to get animosity towards the government. I never wanted them to grow up with that, because it's the wrong way to think, and it's only going to hurt them. So I always tell them, look, I made a mistake. This was a different life. And, you know, I found out when the kids want to love their parents, they want to love their parents, and you got to give them reasons not to love you. And I always made my kids understand, I love you, Daddy loves you, and even when I was away, I tried to make them know that, and it's worked out. I mean, you know, they're good kids. I've been so blessed. My son's been my struggle, but, you know, in his heart, he's a good kid, but it's okay. They're all right.
It's okay for your kids to love you and honor you and recognize that there were errors in your character. There were flaws in your thinking. You don't have to lose honor for a parent to recognize this is wrong. And you've taught your kids, look, this part of my life, the way I used to think, the way I used to act, that was wrong. I'll guarantee you didn't lose respect from them. You gained greater honor because you humbled yourself and you were honest.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think they look at it that way. And, you know, even, you know, again, the kids accept your faults. And I tell them, I say, look, Dad is not perfect, you know, in any way, shape, or form. But I love you, and I try to do better. And they recognize my strong points and my weak points, you know, and we just move on. And, you know, it works out.
Yeah.
My wife, I'll tell you a story. My wife, until today, I've never sat down and have a conversation with my wife about my former life. It's still in me that I can talk to a crowd, but I can't talk to her about it.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know why. And she doesn't want to know. She don't ask.
She never read your book?
First time she read my book, she read The Good, the Bad, the Forgiven, the book that I really put my heart in. Out of all the books I wrote, it's a small book. I wrote it that way because I wanted it in paperback so I can get it into all the prisons. I'm bringing it to prisons throughout the country because I really believe that's a book that will move you to seek Jesus.
Right.
She read that book a year ago. When I was on the road, she wrote me an email, and she had me in tears because she said, I never realized what you went through because I never shared it with her in breaking away from the life. But other than that, no, she don't read the book, she don't watch TV, she don't do nothing. TV comes on, they have this big thing, 10 Commandments of the Mafia that they interviewed me through. She won't watch it, nothing. So I get home from, I get released on parole, 96. Goodfellas comes out. I says, honey, let's go see that movie. A little nostalgic for me. I knew those guys. Let's go see it. I said, come on, let's go. She's all right. So we get in the movie, and I don't know how many of you saw it, but I eat popcorn in the movie. I go to a movie for popcorn. I love it. And so I'm eating, and the movie opens up, And right away.
So hang on, you're telling me next time to get you here, all I have to do is offer you popcorn?
I love popcorn, man. I go, and I won't share it with anybody. My wife, I buy, I said, look, you want popcorn, I'll buy your own. I don't want anybody touching mine. She thinks I'm crazy. I buy a large tub and I eat the whole thing every time. It's part of the movie experience, right? So we're in there, and right away I knew I made a mistake because, that's a graphic movie, and Henry Hill's starting to talk, and I said, oh my gosh. So she turns to me at one point and she says, is this what your life was really all about? And I'm eating popcorn. I said, honey, it's a movie. It's Hollywood. They make things up. Watch the movie, right? And I'm getting nervous, right? I'm trying to deflect her. No sooner do I say that, a minute later, there's a scene around the bar, and they start introducing guys that were part of that life, made guys. And they're going, there's Dono, and some guy turns around, kind of looks like me, and goes, and there's Michael Franzese. She looks at me and says, come on, honey, let's go. We packed up, walked right out, because I didn't know what else they were going to say.
So your name is in the movie?
Yeah, because I knew them well. They were naming guys around him.
How many people here in the audience knew his name was in the movie? Anybody? Let me see your hand. A few people? Yeah.
Yeah, and if you Google Michael Franzese from the movie, Google, my picture comes up.
Wow.
So I said, let's go. They only mentioned my name. Nothing further came out of there. Right. But that movie was pretty realistic. I mean, I got to tell you this. Henry Hill never looked so good as he looked in that movie. I mean, he wasn't a made guy. His father wasn't Italian. And they made him out to be a lot more important than he was. He wasn't that.
But fairly realistic.
Yeah, but Robert De Niro was the guy by the name of Jimmy Burke who died in prison. He was really the architect of the whole Lufthansa robbery at the time. And then Paulie Vario. I mean, they were depicted pretty real in that movie.
How many times have you come close to dying because of your activities?
Well, that one time that I spoke about. And people always ask me, have you ever been shot? And the answer is no. I was shot at one night, and in Brooklyn, got out of a diner with got out of my car to go into a meeting in a diner. It was about 11:30, and somebody opened fire on us. Mm-hmm. Hit the ground, they shot up the car, and as it turns out, it was a mistake. They thought I was somebody else.
Wow.
Needless to say, you don't make those kind of mistakes. We dealt with it. They're still alive. At least they were back then. I want you to think that. But
they just limp?
Well, you don't. That's serious. I mean, you don't do something like that. But that was it. And they didn't hit me, and they didn't hit the other two guys. But that was it. I never had any other encounter.
Right. Mike, most important question of all. You had a God encounter. Mm-hmm. Some of these folk, I'm sure all of them, very, very good people. But in the Bible, in God's Word, it says we're all sinners. You came to Jesus Christ. This is much more than religion. It's not religion. You have a relationship with Jesus Christ. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
How do you have a relationship with Christ?
Well, again, to me, the relationship with Jesus, after you accept him, look, anybody can know Jesus. Anybody can accept him because they want their sins forgiven. But then to give him your life and say, Lord, be the Lord of my life and guide me through this life so that I can fulfill the purpose that you have for me, that's a whole nother deal. Right. And that is what the relationship is all about, to seek him in almost everything that you do. Does it mean that you're never going to sin again? No. I don't hold myself up to be perfect in any way. I have more flaws than anything. But I turn to God in almost everything I do and say, Lord, guide me through this, help me through this, because I realize that every day I'm on this earth is a bonus to me. He's done so much for me in my life, and I've seen him in the lives of others. I've seen how he's worked in my life. So I want him to be, and I'm in awe of Jesus as a man. And that meant so much to me. He is the man that I look up to now. And when I need guidance, I'll go to the Gospels and I'll read what Jesus has to say. Yeah. And I'll read Proverbs that I believe, is the Lord's word.
Absolutely.
So this is how we formed a relationship. I form a relationship with Jesus through you. Because when I sit with you, you nourish me. Right. I form a relationship. One thing that I missed in that life, people said to me, Mike, what do you miss about the life? Do you miss the power, you know what I mean? I've learned to deal. I don't worry. I want to be comfortable in my life now. That's what I want. I don't need all the other stuff. but I missed the camaraderie I had with the guys.
Right.
That
Friendship,
brotherhood,
fellowship.
that fellowship, you know, it's so strong. I missed that, and I had a long time dealing with, but God has replaced that with fellowship that I have now with my brothers in Christ and my sisters in Christ.
Yeah.
And that's so important. So my relationship with Jesus is developed and strengthened through my relationship with others. Mm-hmm. That's why I say we weren't meant to go through this solo. We were not. And people say, oh, I don't need to go to church. And yes, you do.
Yeah.
And yes, you need to be in fellowship. And yes, men's groups need to come together. Yeah. Iron sharpens iron. We need to be part of all of this.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so all of this is important. That's how you develop your relationship with the Lord. Mm-hmm. And that's how he allows it to grow.
Yeah. A lot of people, when we witness to them, we talk to them about Jesus, you know, first thing they'll say, get a little defensive, but I'm a good person. And that's why I say, look, this room is filled with good people. I have no doubt. And if that's the first thing that you would say at a question like, are you born again? Have you asked Christ in your heart? The reality is, none of us are good enough.
That's right.
That's the bottom line. I grew up in a preacher's home. I'm a preacher's kid. I'm not a preacher because I was a preacher's kid. I'm a preacher today because I had to come to Jesus Christ.
That's right.
I may not have done what you did, but in the eyes of God, I was just as guilty of sin, period. There aren't degrees of sin. Right. Sin is sin, and sin will take us to hell. And it doesn't matter whether you were confirmed, baptized, an altar boy, whether you sang in the choir. Those are good things. But friend, you must come to a place in your life where you ask Jesus Christ to come into your heart and you give him the right to live inside of you. You hand your life over to him. Jesus is the one who coined the phrase, you must be born again. He didn't say there was an option. You must. Now, if Jesus is God, and we believe he is, when he says you must be born again, this is something we have to look into. Nicodemus was a religious leader, and he came to Jesus at night. He was afraid the other guys would reject him, laugh at him, scorn him. And he says, Master, what must I do to go to heaven? Here's a religious leader with a very serious and important question. The guy was being honest. He had some doubts. Mm-hmm. Jesus said, Nicodemus, you must be born again. And Nicodemus said, what are you talking about? How am I going to enter my mother's womb again? Jesus said, no, you were born once of flesh and blood, born of water, but you must be born again spiritually. And this is when we invite Christ. We recognize we're sinners. Might be good people, but we've all sinned. Just like criminals, they justify, you know, even non-criminals. We like to justify. We like to think, hey, I'm not that bad. I'm not as bad as that guy. But the reality is, every one of us have to come to a point in our lives where we humble ourselves before God. We acknowledge that there has been sin in our lives. And when we humble ourselves and say, Jesus, come into my heart, that's when God literally takes our invitation. And the Bible says that his Spirit will come and live inside of us. And all of a sudden, reading the Bible comes alive because now you're reading it through the eyes of the author. Your spirit's alive. You understand things that before you never understood. Right. You would have been Catholic. You would have gone to church many, many times. No comparison to that and having Jesus Christ in your heart, is there?
And I am, look, people say to me, you a Catholic? Well, I've gone through the sacraments. I went through Catholic school. I received communion, confirmation, you know, the whole thing. But I didn't have a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And all that doesn't mean anything without the relationship with Jesus.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's like you said, it makes everything come alive to you.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of the people that struggle with sin, what I try to tell them is, the Bible never promised us perfection, but I believe the sign of a Christian is that when you do sin, you're convicted.
Yeah.
and you want to do better, and you immediately ask the Lord. Now, I know when I sin, I'll sin anyway sometimes, but I'm convicted. I feel it right away. Lord, forgive me. A sincere Lord, forgive me.
Yeah.
And you go on and you try to do better. That's the sign of a real believer that has this relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, when I tell people to drive the point home, if I were ever to betray my wife, of course I'm going to be worried about what she would say, but I think first it would come, before I even did the betrayal, would be more Jesus. What's Jesus going to think about this?
Right.
I would think that first. Right. And that's how I know that my relationship is really there.
Yeah.
Because he comes into my mind first.
He's that much of a priority.
Yeah, because fortunately over the years and through the time and experience and people around me, he's become that part of me.
Yeah.
And boy, when you have that in your life, you can't explain the difference, Pastor. You know it, and those of you that are in the audience that have that relationship, it's just such a different feeling. It really is, and it's there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
And
Mike, I want you to come down here with me. We're going to talk to the crowd here, and we want to give people this opportunity to come to know Jesus Christ, just like you've come to know Jesus Christ. And friend, this doesn't make one person better than another person. In God's eyes, we're all the same. He loves us. He loves you. I don't care what you've done. Quite honestly, God doesn't care what you've done in the past. He cares about what you're going to do tonight. Are you going to accept him? You have an opportunity to let the creator of this universe come into your heart. There's one thing God can't forgive, and that's when we reject him and say, no, I don't want it. There is no blood for that. God wants you. I don't care what you've been through. I care about your pain. But God loves you so much, he wants you the way you are. So many people think they've got to clean up their act before they can come to God. Listen, you can't clean up your act enough. What I love about Jesus Christ, what I love about the real gospel, is that God loves you so much, he wants you exactly the way you are. He says, I want to be identified with you right now. In your weakness, in your failure, in your sin. You don't have to clean yourself up for me to want you. I want you how you are. Only God can love unconditionally like that.
Yeah,
my friend, yeah.
If I could say something, you know, and I find this, a lot of people are struggling, and I hear this all the time, and I spent 29 months and 7 days in solitary confinement and for a good part of that, I didn't know if I was ever going to get out of prison. I appreciate that now because I think God let me understand that if this is hell, and hell is much worse, I don't want to spend the rest of my life. So he put a healthy fear of that in me and drove me to want to know him more, to be sure. But I can honestly tell you that it was the worst time of my life. I feared I lost my family, and God gave me such strength because he gave me hope. And I found hope in the Bible. And I know that he strengthened me because a lot of people I know that went through solitary, they came out different. Their mind was all messed up because you can just drive yourself crazy in there 24/7, 4 walls and a light, and that's it. And if you didn't have something to, you know, and I don't mean anything just to cling to, I mean something real. And if God didn't come real to me, I don't know that I would have made it through. And so those of you that are really struggling, if you turn to him and really read your Bible and really fill yourself with the hope that he provides, it will make such a difference in your life. It'll get you through the struggles that we're still going to have. You know, God doesn't promise us heaven on earth. He promises us heaven in heaven, but he promises us that he will be with us through all the struggles, and it's so real. If you allow him into your heart and you allow him to really show you that, it is real. He'll get you through the biggest. I'll share this with you. I get emotional with this because I believe sometimes the sins of the father fall on the children.
Yeah.
And I said, Lord, I ask you one thing. I'll do anything. I'll sacrifice my life. I'll do anything. But please don't let my sins fall on my children, Lord. I've seen it happen in my family with brothers and sisters. because that wouldn't test my faith, because nothing can change my faith in him. I understand that, but I say, Lord, please don't ever let that happen to me. Don't test me in that way. Don't punish me in that way. Do anything else you want to me, but don't do that. And, it's the only thing I worry about. And I really mean that. And even that wouldn't change, because he's too real to me. It wouldn't make me disbelieve him. I might get angry with him, but I'll come back. I know that. But that's the one thing I ask, and that's how much he cemented himself in my heart. Yeah. And when you can get to that point with Jesus, he will make such a difference in your life.
Yeah. Friend, you came tonight to see a mob guy, to hear a story. But God brought you here because he wants you. He wants your heart. He wants relationship with you. You are that important to him. He cares about you. You can know about Mike. I've had the privilege. I really know the guy. I love him. I like him. We enjoy each other's company. We have fun. God wants you to have that kind of relationship with him. He wants to have that kind of relationship with you. Don't let the devil make you think, I'm not good enough. None of us are good enough. He wasn't good enough, and the preacher's kid wasn't good enough. I don't know if you can get two more extremes. Your dad was underboss in the mafia. My dad was a preacher. You were a sinner. I was a sinner. You had to come to Christ, and I had to come to Christ. And friend, every one of us must come to Jesus Christ. If you would say yes, and you have never deliberately, purposely said yes to Jesus Christ before, and you'd like to say yes to him tonight, friend, I want you to put your hand up. We must let Jesus Christ come into our heart. He's the one who will make a difference. Right now, all across this auditorium, the Holy Spirit is touching you. Put your hand up and say, Pastor, I want to say yes to Jesus.